trade deal. Trade deal being announced at the ASEAN summit will be a very big factor for India to consider, because unless there's a trade deal which is unequally fair and favorable to India, I don't think it can happen at ASEAN summit, because the Bihar elections are going to take place within a week time, and I don't think the domestic politics will permit the Indian government to take a risky trade deal decision just a few days before a very, very important state election taking place in India.
It is difficult to know because when President Trump is engaged in negotiations, he thinks of himself as a master deal maker. The Art of the Deal was his famous best-selling book. So he only lets the information out to the world that he wants the world to know.
All right, a lot to unpack here. Let's introduce our guests on India Connect. Joining me on the show tonight is Colonel Rajeev Agarwal. He's a senior research consultant at the Chintan Research Foundation. He joins us live from New Delhi. And we also have with us Matthew Vedam. He's a senior journalist and author, joining us live from Washington, D.C. A warm welcome to both my guests. Colonel Rajeev Agarwal, let me start with you. A very warm welcome. Let's begin with the Mint report, which has caused a lot of flutter and, may I say, even excitement. If the report is to be believed, India and the United States may be very close to striking a deal, and the staggering 50% tariffs that have been imposed on India by Donald Trump could in fact be slashed to 15 to 16% as a fallout of that deal. Now, there is nothing confirmed, let's be very clear, from either side. But this report, as I said, has certainly caused much excitement. What do you make of it?
Thank you, Neha. And firstly, a warm Diwali greetings to you and your audience. And
Thank
also,
you.
congratulations on your new show. Your show, Global Pulse, is already making waves. And I'm sure India Connect will also do extremely well and become equally popular.
Thank you so much, Rajeev. I truly appreciate that.
Coming to this, I mean, we saw the report in the Mint, and I would say it is optimistic, but we have to be cautious about the whole outcome, because the basic issue in this whole game plan and the way it has been going is, you have narrated the whole rundown of how it has happened. There is a basic contradiction between how India sees the relationship and how US sees the relationship. India sees the relationship to be fostered and nurtured in an institutional framework, where the processes of the government, the processes of the ministry, the joint working groups should take a lead and lead to the outcomes which are mutually beneficial to both the countries. Whereas Donald Trump, the president, he believes in more a personality based approach, where what he says and what he wants, as a single point contact. He wants to be the single point contact for everything that United States has to do with any part of the world. So there is a basic contradiction, and like you said in your exchange of tweet messages between Modi and Trump, Trump tried to personalize the issue and tried to drive India into accepting, submitting, or acknowledging some part of what he wants. But India has stood its ground, not only now in this X message, but also in the past few months, relying on institutional frameworks, relying on how the mechanisms will work. And yes, it is very much possible that the trade deal, even if not fully matured, could be announced as a framework deal or some part of it, if Modi and Trump both go to the ASEAN summit. Reports are saying that the Malaysian government has already announced that Modi is coming. There's no confirmation on Trump. But that set aside, to me, whether it is a 15%, 16%, or retention of 50% till the time there's a trade deal, the basic contradiction has to be resolved, where a personality based policy is facing an institutional based policy, and that is where the lack of convergence comes in.
I couldn't agree more with you, Rajeev. Perhaps one of the biggest issues that really has plagued this relationship is, that Trump's worldview seems to be very different from India's, and the way he's approached this very critical relationship is very different from the manner in which India has invested in this strategic partnership over the years and decades. Let me bring in our American guest, Matthew Vadum, at this point. Matthew, as I mentioned, an Indian financial newspaper report claims that after long delays, India and the United States may finally be close to clinching a trade deal. And as part of that, India could finally agree to open up its agricultural markets to the United States, something that has been, not just a big demand from Washington, but also a bone of contention between the two countries. But that once that happens, the 50% tariffs, the punitive tariffs slapped on India by Trump could in fact drop to as much to as little as 15%. Well, compared to 50%, you would think 15% is very little. Like I said, there is no confirmation of this either from the Indian government or from the White House. But what is your reading of this report, and what signals are you picking up from your sources in Washington?
It is difficult to know because when President Trump is engaged in negotiations, he thinks of himself as a master deal maker. You know, The Art of the Deal was his famous best-selling book. So he only lets the information out to the world that he wants the world to know, and that serves his purposes. So we don't know for sure what happened, but I would not be surprised to learn that the U.S. and India are drawing closer together to getting rid of um, the huge tariffs that the United States imposed on India earlier this year under President Trump's leadership. So, yeah, I wouldn't be. I don't know for sure. I don't think anyone knows except for President Trump and Prime Minister Modi what happened. But I would not be surprised that the two of them are making progress because India is a very important partner for the United States. And although President Trump was talking up Pakistan in that video clip that you showed, Pakistan is far less important to the United States than India is. And I think that he wants to make a deal with India, and that he's making an effort to do so. But he is very wily when it comes to negotiations. So again, we only know what he wants us to know. And likely what will happen is the deal will be made before we even know what's happening. And then all of a sudden it will be announced after the fact. And until then, we're all sitting around scratching our heads, wondering what is going on, because President Trump is a skillful negotiator and he tightly controls the flow of information. He will not let information out, especially not through his own lips, that he does not think serves his purposes. So this report from the Indian media is encouraging. We don't know if it's true, but I don't really. There are no red flags here. Nothing makes me think it is not true. So we should take it with a grain of salt, but it looks optimistic for India and the U.S.
One would have to agree with you there, and one can hope. So let's certainly hope that this report is indeed correct, and that in the days and weeks ahead we do see that all important trade deal finally materializing, even as the scratching of the heads continues, Matthew, both here and in Washington, D.C., because like you rightly said, with President Trump, you just never know. Yes, he might be a skillful and tough negotiator, but he's also a very unpredictable man who can also change his mind at the drop of a hat. And it's interesting you said that Pakistan is far less important to the US than India is. I wish somebody would remind Donald Trump of that. given how much he's been courting Pakistan in recent months, much to India's chagrin. And that is what I want to discuss with you two gentlemen next. Colonel Rajeev Agrawal, starting with you. You know, we talked earlier, Rajeev, about how the perceptions of the two sides seem to be so differing, you know, every step of the way. Even when these two leaders have a phone conversation, the readouts that come from Washington and New Delhi often seem to be vastly different, if not contradictory. Now, look at the messaging that's come from Prime Minister Modi himself this time. Prime Minister Modi has made it very clear that while he appreciates Donald Trump's phone call and Diwali greetings, he has, in a sense, conveyed India's unease with Trump's growing closeness to Pakistan by saying that India and the US, as two great democracies, need to stay united against all forms of terrorism. I think that is a rather unsubtle message from Prime Minister Modi to President Trump, which comes after Trump has gone out of his way to woo Pakistan, especially its army chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir. And considering that all of this came so soon after the Pahalgam terror attack and Operation Sindoor, obviously it has caused a lot of heartburn here in New Delhi. But if you look at Trump's messaging, he seems still to be obsessing over India's purchases of Russian oil and goes on claiming that Prime Minister Modi has assured him that we will buy less and less of Russian oil, despite the fact that there is absolutely no confirmation of that from the Indian side.
Absolutely. I mean, it could not have been more clearer. And the fact that in the Diwali message, the only word apart from Diwali that Modi has put in his X messages, fighting against terrorism in all forms, you don't have to say any further than that. When you talk of terrorism and Pahalgam and the Operation Sindoor was all about countering terrorism. When India says that we have changed the red lines on fighting terrorism and any kind of terror will invite a punitive response across the international border, it is all about terrorism. And it is an absolute direct message to the United States about how it is courting Pakistan. But here I would like to also tell you, Neha, one thing, because I interact in the security circles, etc. India is not too wary or too perturbed about what US is doing with Pakistan, whether it is in form of financial aid or whether it is in form of military aid, because the history shows that Pakistan has always been, if I can use the word, use and throw as far as US is concerned. So one day it is the poster boy for the United States, and on another day it is the hotbed of terror and the fountainhead of terror, etc., whatever they want to call it. So uh, and Pakistan is very happy as long as it is getting two things. One is money, because it is absolutely bankrupt. Economy is going on a downward spiral. And second is prominence, which they so love about it. When Field Marshal Munir is standing in the getting a reception in the White House. You must have seen when the Gaza peace conference was held. Trump called Shehbaz Sharif to say a few words, and those few words were like a puppet, talking of praise for his master. So it is
Yes.
very, very demeaning. The Pakistan media lashed out at what and how Shahbaz Sharif spoke about, praising the United States president. So I don't think India is too perturbed about this. If I can take just 1 minute, a thought which came to me about the trade deal. Trade deal being announced at the ASEAN summit will be a very big factor for India to consider, because unless there's a trade deal which is unequally fair and favorable to India, I don't think it can happen at ASEAN summit, because the Bihar elections are going to take place within a week time, and I don't think the domestic politics will permit the Indian government to take a risky deal decision just for a few days before a very, very important state election taking place in India. So I'm just putting it on record that will be a very big factor to watch out if at all a framework deal is signed at the ASEAN summit. and that is
I think that's an
a
excellent point you make, Rajiv. Because domestic politics are often intertwined, whether we like it or not, with foreign policy. We saw, for instance, all the criticism that came the way of the Modi government from the opposition led by Rahul Gandhi, after Operation Sindoor, especially with Trump repeatedly claiming credit for brokering the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Prime Minister Modi, no less, had to stand up on the floor of Parliament to clarify that no third country played any role in that. And some believe that India may have paid a heavy price for that clarification, with Trump acting vindictive and imposing 50% tariffs on India. Of course, that remains within the realm of speculation, but that is something that many in India actually continue to believe. So let me now bring in Matthew at this point. Matthew, your thoughts on these two aspects. One, New Delhi is clearly not amused that Donald Trump has been going out of his way to woo Pakistan and its army chief, a country that has obviously continued to export terror to India. And that is an important message that Prime Minister Modi seems to have sent to Trump in his Diwali message. The other point, Trump's obsession with India buying Russian oil. He's been claiming repeatedly since last week that Prime Minister Modi has assured me he will stop buying Russian oil. India still maintains that it will do what it feels will serve its national interests best. And it might mean buying more American energy. But there is absolutely no claim that's been made publicly anywhere suggesting that India will stop buying Russian oil. What do you make of it? Is this Trump being Trump, living in an alternate reality?
Do you want me to deal first with Pakistan? The I
Yes.
think the U.S. approach for years at the U.S. State Department has been that Pakistan is very suspicious and that they have, basically half of their intelligence apparatus is friendly and half of it is controlled by Islamists, terrorist friendly forces. And the U.S. thinking has been that it is best to engage with Pakistan, so at least we know what is going on there. But I don't think it would be fair to describe Pakistan as an ally of the United States. They would never say this at the State Department, but Pakistan is, that you've heard that made up word frenemy, right? Friend and enemy. I think that
Yes.
Pakistan is a frenemy of the United States. So, and what do you do with enemies? Is you keep them close so you know what they're doing. Now, President Trump playing footsie under the table with Pakistan. I don't know how much you should read into that. He's just being nice, and he's trying to maintain relations with a country that has some strategic importance, but is obviously not as nearly as important as India. Now, with respect to India buying Russian oil, he has. I think that the statements that President Trump has made are aspirational, in that he
Yes.
is hoping to shame India into reducing or eliminating its purchase of Russian oil, so that Russia will be deprived of hard currency to buy war materiel for its ongoing war in Ukraine. I think that no matter what Prime Minister Modi says in the conversation, President Trump is going to say that India is going his way. This is a technique in negotiation, where one side encourages the other to rise to their expectations. In other words, he's sort of projecting what he wants India to do, hoping that India will do it. And people do this every day in their everyday lives, and countries do this in negotiations. I think that President Trump's statement about India buying Russian oil are aspirational and should not be taken literally. He really wants India to cut back on the Russian oil purchases, even though there's been no hard evidence so far that India is doing any more than actually just thinking about it. They haven't taken any steps to do it. So it's something he wants them to do, and he's just sort of projecting this idea, hoping that that if he repeats it, they will pick up on it. And sometimes this tactic is effective, and sometimes it isn't.
It's interesting you choose the word aspirational. I think you're being charitable because many, at least in India, would say that these are pressure tactics that Donald Trump employs on a regular basis. Some who might want to be even harsher might say he lives in an alternate reality. Gentlemen, I
I'm
need
trying to
to
be polite. Trying to be polite.
clearly
Just like
you
President
you
Trump.
you are definitely a polite and diplomatic man, and you are being charitable towards Donald Trump, and we will not hold that against you. Gentlemen, finally, as we wrap up this conversation, I want to put one question to both of you and take closing and quick comments. Starting with you, Rajeev. We know the ASEAN summit is around the corner. As I said, there's been speculation that if things do go well with the India-US trade deal, then Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump may in fact meet on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. It's even been speculated that the deal could be announced by them on that occasion, on that platform. Do you see that happening?
Neha, to me, frankly, very difficult that it will happen. They might go to the ASEAN summit. Trump has not confirmed. Modi has indirectly confirmed, and Malaysian government is confirming. They may meet at the sidelines out of basic courtesy that Prime Minister Modi always extends. But a trade deal happening, especially because of what I said in my earlier comments, domestic politics, very difficult. And I also say this based on what we had an interaction with the foreign minister, Dr. Jaishankar, few weeks back, and the interview what Piyush Goyal gave, that it is a long, a long distance. I mean, a long way off, and many more threads have to be unraveled before something concrete happens. So maybe a framework deal without any concrete announcement, but very difficult to happen.
Difficult at this moment. Matthew, what's your take? The ASEAN summit is just days away. Is it too far-fetched to say that there could be an India-US deal signed as early as the 26th or 27th of October? And even if, let's say, there is no formal inking of the deal, do you believe there's a strong chance the two leaders could meet on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit? And do you think that could be an opportunity for them to, in a sense, sort of iron out some of the huge differences that have cropped up in the India-US relationship in recent months?
Reaching a deal at the ASEAN summit is a possibility, but I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for it to happen. Trade deals are very complex,
Yeah.
and although Trump and Modi have tried to simplify the issues as best as they can, as well as they can, they're very complex, and to suddenly force everything to happen in time for the ASEAN summit seems unlikely to me, but stranger things have happened, and Donald Trump surprises people all the time, and this has for the most part worked out very well for him and for his administration. So I would say it's possible, but do not expect it to happen.
Okay, possible, but do not expect it to happen. But I think we can all agree with Donald Trump always expects the unexpected. It's been great having you both gentlemen on the inaugural episode of India Connect. Thank you so much, Colonel Rajeev Agarwal and Matthew Vedum, for joining me.